Hey, this is Angel. This is my 11th day in a row making videos like this. I'm happy about that. So, something that came up for me today was the idea of releasing. Um, Being able to release stress, release trauma, release worry, release fear. So, yesterday I watched a video briefly and the person was talking about how if we release stress, then we don't have to process it. And the person was saying that, like, they could feel the emotion, but they don't need to process it, as in, they don't need to relive it. And I thought that was really interesting because I was like, at first, like, oh, yeah, like, that makes sense. Like, if you just can let it go, then it's not affecting you anymore and you're not like reliving the thing that's hurting you. And then I started thinking about that in the case of trauma. Trauma is reliving the situation. It's like something traumatic happens, but we're tending to the wound of what happened. And I felt like to say that we can just like release so easily, like i I think that that's amazing. I think that that's the goal, and anyone who can do that is, like, that's, I'm happy for them. um and then I started thinking how, like, I'm talking to the people who haven't been able to do that, or who are still in a space of feeling like they need to release these things or finding ways to let go. Um, I watched another video talking about a practice that occurs in the Lakota tribe, Native American tribe here in the United States, in the Native America. Um, and it was talking about how when you have like trauma or have experienced, like, it was kind of like emphasizing like experiencing something like violent, a way to release it that helped more than like talk therapy was taking stones or shells, collecting some kind of like object and taking it to a body of water and putting it into the body of water while saying aloud the thing that happened. Um, and this kind of helps to acknowledge it, give it space, and let it go. And it went on to say too that you can bring back one of these objects as like a witness to that experience of releasing. I thought that sounded so beautiful, like just the idea of like going to some place in nature and speaking aloud what has happened and being able to let that go. Um, I think, like, when we're talking about high stress situations or like traumatic events, a lot of times it can change the way that we operate next. So, like, our next move, the next relationships we're in, the next ways of doing things, because we're acting from like a place of protection. Um, and I think that's totally valid. Like, sometimes we develop ways of being so that we never have to experience something again. It's like a way of like protecting ourselves, protecting our mind. I think it's like a very like primal subconscious thing that happens when we've experienced something that we don't ever want to experience again. It's like we learn from what's happened, and sometimes what we learn we can name, but we also have ways of coping so that we don't experience that again. And I feel like that's where releasing really it comes into play, because it's like if in the past, I've had like things that I've held on to, and when I had reminders of those things, when I had moments of reliving those events, I would go into needing to cope, needing to. It was kind of like the feeling of letting go, but maybe I would let go for a moment, but it wasn't really like fully releasing from me. It's just kind of like temporarily forgetting or temporarily numbing that experience. I think a lot of times too, like I've put my energy into, um, I've heard this, and like the way I really like to think about it is like alchemizing these hard feelings and being able to put it into something else, turn it into something else. For me, it's been like creating, like being able to create something and go into like a meditative state. It's like maybe I will think about the thing that is like affecting me, but in that process it's like I am undoing it. If I could think of like a way to describe it, it'd be like weaving. Like if I'm like weaving like a tapestry, I'm weaving all of my thoughts through, all of my feelings through, until it's a finished piece. And in that, it's like has been released from me. Um, there's so many ways to go about doing this. Like the example that like I said earlier, from the Lakota tribe, like I've had moments where maybe like I did a form of that like subconsciously. Like for me, something that always like helped to kind of have an emotional reset was like going to the beach. Like I loved going to the beach and being able to just like see the water, feel the sand, like the walk from, wherever I'm at to like through the sand to get to the water. It always felt like a kind of like a journey in that way, where like I knew that like if I just reached the water, like I would feel like okay again. And there's so many ways to like have this feeling of letting go in action that we're doing, like being able to have that like feeling of like letting go of hard energy, stagnant energy, like negative energy, and putting it in a direction, whether it's like through creation or a form of like ritual in this way. I know that like sometimes we know things that can help us, but it's like we need constant reminders. And for me, like sometimes I would just have heightened feelings, or I would just get really emotional about something. And even though I could know, like, or I've heard before, like, if you're having a stressful situation, meditate. If you're um, feeling anxiety, like, do breath work. Like, there are all these things, all these ways to manage emotion. But I think sometimes it's just about like having that reminder, and having the reminder that you then experience yourself. Like sometimes someone can tell us something or suggest something, but we don't really like feel it. Like we have to, it's like we have to discover it for ourselves again. And we're just constantly like discovering these new things that make us feel okay again. And sometimes it's things that we've experienced before, sometimes the new things. There's always like different ways to just be and do and let go in this way. I think for me sometimes like if I'm feeling like fear, for example, like going head into something and having this like moment where I'm really telling myself like okay, like maybe I have feared this before, but if I face it, then that is like a release in itself. And there are levels to fear too. Like there's some things where like it's that simple. I can just like have this like internal dialogue and I can have that lead to action that allows me to get over the fear or do the thing that I'm afraid of. I think for me it's like been like social situations too. Like sometimes I just feel so like disconnected from people that like I couldn't even name it as fear, but I would have like kind of a resistance to being around people or like feeling like if I was around people then I wasn't going to feel like deep connection. And then there's other things where like if I've experienced, trust issues or like experience like some form of like violence, then anything that reminds me of that situation, I experience like a almost like a flare up like in my body. I have like a lot more resistance to that. It's not the same kind of um it's not like the fear that it's not the kind of fear that I want to overcome. It's like the kind of thing where it's like my body protecting myself because I have experience things that I don't want to experience again. But when that happens, sometimes it's like the my body's response is there's like almost like a disconnect from like my mind and my body in that way, and being able to like come back to that connection so that I can feel calm again and I can like allow that release to happen is is what makes it so that I can just regulate myself again. I can have like a stableness in my nervous system and I can make decisions that continue to stabilize my nervous system. I think like the idea of just like being able to like let something go like as soon as it happens is very powerful. And I feel like it's what allows us to like really move forward and continue to do the things that like we want to do. But sometimes it's not that simple. Like there are things that can impact us in a way that like stays with us. And I feel like for how intense those situations can be, it's just like a matter of like undoing it, unraveling it, um, having like the same amount of like positive feelings in a different direct in like the opposite direction of those like intense feelings. And it takes like sometimes it takes time, sometimes it's very quick, sometimes we could have like a very impactful moment that makes us change the way that we're thinking about something. um but I think that's where like having grace for yourself really comes in. Because hearing that video that I talked about before where this person is just like, you don't need to like process stress. It's like maybe logically I could tell myself that like I don't need to like process this stress, but sometimes like if I've had consistent stressful situations, it's like my body's speaking to me. It's not just like my mind. It's like my body's requiring rest. It's requiring maybe like different kinds of like nutrients, like it's needing different things. Like I'm like tending to it the same way that we like tend to the wounds that trauma can cause. It's like tending to the feelings that like can arise with like stressful moments so that we don't feel burnout, so that we don't like get that burnout. And I think that there are ways to like shift your mindset like very quickly. Like there are times when I've had stressful situations and then I've reminded myself like, okay, like that was then. That was then. This moment is a new moment. And every single new moment, it's like we're constantly getting new like new time. You know, it's like from even when I started this video to now I'm like some time in, it's like my feelings could change, you know, the way that I'm like feeling in my body, the way that like my stress is like every single moment is a new opportunity to feel differently about something. And I think that's like how we can evolve, like how we can expand, like being able to allow what has been in the past. Maybe it can inform us in a way, but it doesn't have to create limitations or stop our feeling of like expanding or feeling of trying new things or doing things in like a different way, because the fears of what have happened in the past are like constantly informing the future. um so that's what I was thinking about today. That's what kind of like came up, is just like feeling like, okay, like there are things that like I can let go, even if there was like a stressful moment yesterday. It's like if I continue to think about it today, then I'm not giving myself the opportunity of new time and like new emotions. And all of these things I think like compound onto each other. If I'm like if I'm like holding on to these negative emotions, that can inform the way I see things in the next moment, or it starts to shape the way that I'm like viewing things, because my emotions start to inform my external world. And the same thing is true for positive emotions. It's like when we're having like positive emotions, like we can give ourselves more grace, we can give other people more grace, we can allow for stressful moments to exist and then like dissipate in the next action, in the next moment. We're constantly like making these choices. um yeah, we're constantly making these choices, like how to feel, how to be, how to react to things. And a lot of times like I fully get that like sometimes like our reaction time is so much faster than our like logical mind. Like we feel things like before we think about things. And I think that's where like that pause exists, knowing that like we feel and then we have choices followed by that. And having that ability to like process and also like separate ourselves from all of these emotions, knowing that like at our core we are not like emotion, we are soul. And how that can start to interact with each other and help us like make decisions and help us with like follow up actions. Yeah, that's what came up for me today. So I hope that anyone who's watched to this point can have like a moment of letting go of something, whether it's like, you know, hard feelings, um, having like some moments where you can come back to feeling like a sense of ease or feeling a sense of enjoyment, feeling a sense of happiness, being able to separate yourself from a stressful moment, a sad moment, even for a time, enough to be able to feel like healing or have new emotions. So I'm really hoping for everyone's release from pain, really. Um, and I'm gonna keep making videos like this, and as long as I feel like it. So stay chill. It was nice chatting, and I hope you have a good time.